Hello, listeners. This is Janani Prakaash, and you are listening to the CHRO Mindset podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the CHRO Mindset podcast, where we bring you candid, thought-provoking conversations with top HR leaders and experts. And here's your host, Pulkit Joshi. Today, we have the privilege of hosting Janani Prakaash. Janani is the head of People and Culture at Genzeon. With over 17 years of progressive HR leadership experience, she previously served as the global head of human resources for Quantella, contributing significantly to HR and organizational culture amidst 3 mergers and acquisitions. Janani Prakaash's career includes leadership roles at Deloitte, where she spent close to a decade as an HR leader for various technology groups. She has partnered with senior leaders globally, shaping and implementing people strategies, including M&A, workforce planning, succession planning, diversity and inclusion, business transformations, change management, and leadership enhancement. Recognized for her achievements, Janani was featured in the elite club of Business World 40 Under 40 list, received the topmost HR Leader Award at the 30th World HRD Congress 2022, and was acknowledged as one of Asia's 100 power leaders in human resources by White Page International in 2022. She has also received the Women Achievers Award from HR Association of India. Janani Prakaash is actively involved in the National HRD Network as the Young Leader Council member and serves on the executive committee of the Hyderabad chapter. Holding a Bachelor's of Engineering from the University of Madras, she is a gold medalist in her post-graduation HR qualifications. Beyond her professional life, Janani is a certified yoga instructor, trained classical musical vocalist, Veena player, and a teacher. She resides in Hyderabad with her husband and daughter. Janani, thanks for taking out time to speak with us today, and welcome to the CHRO Mindset podcast.
Thank you so much, Pulkit. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you.
Absolutely. Let's start with our icebreaker question. If HR were an element, which one would it be, and how does it relate to your work?
Okay, the element in my view, I'm looking at it as fire, water, air, those kind of elements, okay? So if I have to pick one, I think HR is like fire. No, not to burn the world, but to give that light, the warmth, and really be expansive. So for me, HR is like fire. I'll also tell you why, because HR as a profession gives warmth to people to various levels. It could be for the leadership that they're working with, as well as for the employees that they're catering to, or being mentors to external folks, similar to what I may be doing in my career as well. I think that's about the warmth piece. Light is by bringing external insights, giving that knowledge, bringing newer things and expelling the darkness of the place, and finally be expansive. If you see, one of the roles that's really very impactful and influencing in corporate today is HR for sure, because if you're rolling out a policy, there is impact for everyone. If you're bringing in a new practice, there is impact for everyone. So it's perhaps very responsible, similar to fire, right? If you're going to use fire irresponsibly, then it's going to burn the place. If you're going to use it in a responsible way, it's going to give light. And so I would think that it's very expansive in the way it impacts, and that's why that answer.
Great. Love that answer, Janani. Let's now talk about another story that you would have witnessed in your HR leadership journey, Janani. And I think each one of us, especially in the leadership role, are really struggling at it. And I'm very sure that they are trying to do their best to be able to get over it. So my next question for you is, how do you prioritize your personal growth and development amidst your busy schedule as an HR leader?
Sure. I think it's very important in today's world more than ever before, because you have to not stay in the survival mindset, and the world is in such a way where everything is new every other day, and then you're constantly going through that struggle of how do I keep up with the pace, and therefore move back to fear and then that survival mode. And in survival mode, you will only be able to deliver as much. You can't give masterclass or like a world-class output. So my view is always, I take this view of look at anything that you're doing as a thing that you're doing. It could be HR profession, it could be music that I'm doing, whatever that is, right? It's just for a period of time. But what is it doing to you is what you'll need to take care of, right? That's how I view it. Because life is like a 60, 70, or 80 years journey. We don't know how long we will live, but what we make out of whatever happens to us is very crucial, and how that adds to our transformation is very important. From that angle, I look at varieties of learning opportunities in a way where I'm just getting added up to make a whole, right? If it's abstract, for example, I'm a musician. I look at how I can bring lessons from music and ensure I'm able to add value to HR. How can I take a number of things that I do in corporate to music or yoga, or bring that calmness and balance from yoga to my HR profession, or being an enabler and trying to find answers on people's from within people's own way as a coach, right? How can I bring that to leadership discussions? This is how I try and navigate through my different personas and not limit myself to any of these identities at any point of time. That's number one. Number two, as a HR professional, I definitely need to be very much aware of what's happening. And I do it by accepting to speak in different forums, because by virtue of that, I read 3-4 white papers, talk to 4-5 friends, and know that particular process and become very well aware. So that's a great motivator for me to learn, go share, and people come back and tell me, hey, Janani, I listened to you in this, and I went tried this in my organization, and it really helped. And that's like, okay, not just me learning, I've ensured some more people have learned, right? The best way for you to learn more is by teaching. So that's another aspect. Number three is being very intentional and calendarized about learning itself. Every year, at least for the last 5 years, I've been doing one certification at a given point of time, so that my learning muscle is constantly exercising, and it need not be HR only. I've been pursuing a coaching certification for the last couple of years. I've done NLP certification, and recently I also cleared a master NLP certified instructor. Yoga certified instructor is another one. So I keep doing different learning opportunities. I mean, learning certifications, because there is also an end to it, and then you start something else, and then you think, what do you want next, right? So that way, my learning muscle is kept active. So broadly, I think this is my response.
Great. Thank you for that, Janani. Let's now talk about another story when you had to make a difficult career decision that ultimately led to your growth and professional fulfillment. Please walk us through that.
Sure. I think I've been very enterprising in my career, Pulkit. I think I had taken multiple risks or taken chances saying, okay, if not now, then when, right? So I think choices always have a price to pay. And then you also realize that in the long scheme of things, in the broad scheme of things, maybe all of these choices actually come together. So in one such instance, I was in a startup which was only about 100 people many years ago, and the company was growing, and I had an opportunity to do a merger there as well, very young in my career. But then when I was just having 6 years of experience, I realized that beyond a certain point, that company was not going to grow. And I realized I needed more exposure. I needed more mentors around me, and larger processes that are running a large organization, right? So I made a switch to a bigger company, but with a clear resolve that I will come back to smaller companies at leadership positions at a later point of my career. It was a critical juncture in my career, because I made that decision to move from small to big, in fact, very large again. It's like moving as a fish from a pond to an ocean. But finding a place in that ocean was very important for me, and identifying myself with whatever was limiting me as well was very crucial. So I would say that the first 3 to 6 months I spent just finding myself, saying, okay, what is my foothold? How am I going to establish myself in a place like this? And what specialty can I bring and add value to this place? For all of this, should I be shedding my own inhibitions in many ways? These were my internal dialogues that I went through, but I must say it was one of the most rewarding decisions I made. And um, yeah, I mean, I spent several years in that place and then moved back to a smaller company, yet again, as per my resolve earlier, and became their head of HR. Now, the point is, taking a step back, I think anybody should try and thrive in different environments. It should be product, services, or large and small. Is for any stage in career. For if anybody is listening to this, and if they are in, let's say, their 15th year of their career, and they have always been in large organizations, I would certainly ask them to go try a smaller one, because the environment is totally different, and you will be able to have a lot of your learning from your large organization implemented in smaller organizations. And then it's also the other way around, right? When you're in a smaller organization, you're going to be very enterprising. You're going to be very quick. How can you bring that agility to a large organization? And in a large organization, it's important to spend those many years of experience as well, because you might just be involved in 2 or 3 roles, but then you get to see the life cycle of multiple things over years, because that ultimately builds you as a professional, gives you that larger picture, helps you understand political nuances across the globe, and you understand leadership also much more if you have been in large and small. So maybe it's a slightly longer answer, but yes, for me, some of these have been very important junctures and very critical decisions, but clearly they have helped me shape better as a professional.
Great. Thank you for that, narrating that story, Janani. Thank you. Let's now shift gears a bit, and now let's focus on one area where you have had a tremendous amount of experience, and would love for you to share some wisdom here. And we are going to be talking about M&As, right?
Okay.
So my first question for you is, how should one balance the needs and concerns of employees during an M&A?
Okay. An M&A is always a very uncomfortable situation, right? There is always going to be one party that's excited and one party that's not going to be. So it's important to first understand the key stakeholders who are involved in the M&A, from a leadership perspective, from client's perspective, as well as employees, because it depends on the situation in which one company has acquired the other, or the merger is taking place, whatever that is, right? So if I broadly categorize the stakeholders, I think it's the customers or the clients. Then you have the leadership of the organization, and it is like 2 organizations leadership. So that's like the second piece. Third, the people that are going to run the engine, invariable of whatever it is, they are going to continue to work there, right? Now, it's critical to see how each of these segments are being managed during an M&A. For leadership, first we will need to look at are there any duplications of work if you're going to have 2 companies come together and make those decisions much early on, and ensure that the right level of optimized leadership that will build the organization for the future needs to be identified and said, okay, this is going to be the group that will lead the organization, the merged organization forward. The second aspect is how customers are going to view this whole merger or acquisition as the organization in the market, and how can customer trust be retained in the entire process. So I'm sure the business leaders will take care of this, but as HR professionals, it's important to give that view. And if required, I mean, one of the important trends that I read is how can HR leaders also be involved with the customers to give them that confidence that, hey, now it's in a bigger, the organization is going to be bigger, or this is how we are going to operate, and this is how there is going to be advantage for them as customers by virtue of this merger and acquisition happening, both from a people perspective and a business perspective. I think that's another very important view I want to provide. Finally, people.
Now, during mergers and acquisitions, a lot of people are generally in fear of losing their jobs or their roles getting sizably diminished, or or other kinds of fears, right? Like, will I have autonomy? Will the culture be okay? Will I have to work from home? Will I have to come to office? Whatever that is. Now, it's very important to have those dialogues much early on with every group of people that are being acquired, if it's an acquisition situation. And it's also important for the company that's acquiring to have dialogue with that set of people that are already existing, because they are also going to go through a lot of sentiments. Now, number one, if there is any right sizing that is going to happen by virtue of this M&A, I think it's crucial to identify all of this early on, finish it, and then have conversations with every set of people and give confidence that this anything like this will not happen again, because we have thought through the situation well, which means we should have thought through the situation really well. Another important aspect is just listening to them, doing series of listening sessions, invariable of how much time it might take, but it's important to listen. It's important to list down. It's important to create an action plan, to understand what they are going through and how we are able to allay fears or cater to needs that they will have as part of the M&A. And it's important for the HR leader to take several steps back and then say, okay, this is the organizational state with two different organizations coming together, one being acquired by the other or two getting merged, whatever that is. But for the future state organization, what should culture look like? How should people behave? What are non-negotiables? And then what are some of the aspects that we want to drive at an organizational level? But how do we also take into account whatever has come in as inputs from people, from leadership, from customers, as we design things for the future? I think once this is done, a clear roadmap need to be established, and very methodically we will need to go ahead with implementation plan. So one after the other, when you complete implementation, communication is the key. Continuous communications have to happen with all stakeholders, because every time you communicate and you close the loop, you're going to build trust with people. You're going to build trust with customers or with your leadership. So 3 or 4 times over 4 or 5 months, I think by then they are completely trusting you, which is important because you need to earn the trust at this stage. And after this, you're like a trusted partner, right? People are going to start looking at you very differently, reaching out to you very differently. And at the end of the M&A, let's say it's an 18-month journey. For a smaller M&A, I'm saying some of the very large, complex global ones could take place over 3 or 4 years as well. But let's say the period of 18 months is what a closure is for this particular M&A. It's important to again get back saying, hey, here is what we heard at the beginning. These are the voices we heard from the varieties of stakeholders. But here is where we are right now. These are the various things we have done. And this is how we have brought things to closure. Now, that's going to amplify the trust tremendously. I want to also critically bring in the business aspect. When M&As happen, it's a lot around optimization. Optimization of cost, optimization of people, optimization of systems and technologies. 2 companies, 2 systems, and then there could be resistance. Now, how all of this need to be clearly looked through. Some of them have to be really, take the decision of sunsetting certain things, and then bringing things closer and make everything one, right? Give that as one experience across the organization. But by virtue of it, what's the cost impact? How have you optimized cost for the overall organization? If you extrapolate it to the next 3 years, how many millions are you going to save for the organization? I think that view is very critical as a HR leader to get that and then give it to the leadership so that they know that you're making decisions in the right way. I know it's a longish answer, but M&A is also a complex topic. I think I just tried to do justice with a shorter answer, I must say.
No, that was very detailed, I must say, Janani, and very, very insightful as well. You touched upon almost all the aspects again. I think from a width perspective, everything was covered, and there's no limit to how much we can go into each of those topics. But thank you for that. Now let's look at another very important dimension of M&A. And if we were to marry that with employee experience, how should one ensure a consistent positive employee experience throughout an M&A? Because there's so much confusion during an M&A for a variety of reasons. So it's not always a very pleasant experience for some of the folks. So that's where I feel the challenge is on the HR team to really make it a smooth ride. So please walk through us how should one approach this problem.
I think partly I answered this in my previous question, Pulkit. I think communication is the key when it comes to M&A, or even when you're building the foundation for any organization from an HR perspective. I'll break my answer into two parts. One, the HR team itself, which is like the primary stakeholder here. Second is a group of change management professionals that you can potentially bring in. Bringing in is not like hiring, right? Just take a cross-section of people who will spearhead this change management when this M&A is taking place. And these will be people from the floor. And then, these are like the change agents in my view. So it's very critical for us to take inputs from the insights that have come from the employees early on. In my previous response, I was talking about just doing those listening sessions, right? So while we are making the plan of action to get back to people with varieties of responses or varieties of implementations, it's important that it is having these two teams, the HR team as well as the change champion team, which I would think is a cross-section of the various departments that are involved in change and one or two representatives that will act as the primary change agent for that particular department, being part of this whole change champion group. Now, these two groups should work hand in hand. And for me, what has worked really well is whenever we make changes, we have the change champions go and communicate more with that particular group, right? Let's say by virtue of M&A, there is a performance management change, right? Let's say there is a rating-based performance management to a ratingless performance management because of an M&A. The acquired organization does not have rating. Let's say it is a huge change because many people just go and tie their ratings to their identity. So how can we leverage the change champions and the HR champions to go and communicate this effectively to allay fears? I'm just taking performance management as a particular example. It could cut across levels, titles, compensation structure, just the tools and technologies. I mean, it could be anything for that matter. But it's about saying, you know what, it's not because this company acquired the other company we are taking this, but we've gone ahead and done an external study as to what is right for this size of the future state organization. And basis that 1, 2, 3 is going to be our way forward. Now, if that's what it is, then these are ways everybody has to modify. So taking the people along in the journey, communicating to them effectively, saying how can they play their part along with the change champions. While HR does a lot of communication, change champions within businesses should become the real custodians of ensuring they are doing their own things to talk through with their respective departments. And this is very crucial for employee experience to stay consistent and then become elevated over a period of time. I don't know if it's a little abstract in the way I have responded, Pulkit, but then I would just think there is leadership, there is change champions, there are HR folks who are involved when it comes to defining the employee experience over an M&A situation, and it has to be consistent right from the beginning till the end of the M&A, and even afterwards for a few more months. Then I think employee experience will automatically happen and it will be positive. One last thing I would say is it's important to do number of pulse checks. It's not always about us communicating, but it's always also about listening back from people who are receiving, right? So it's important to do those pulse checks from employees saying, hey, this is what we said, this is what we have done, what do you think? Are there other areas you would like us to focus on? Because rightfully so, there may be certain things that we are unable to see because of the lens that we are viewing the problem or the situation in, but an employee could have a totally different view and that could be a valid view. So we will need to ensure that we are listening to that and we are able to circle back and close loop. So a design thinking approach in defining employee experience is my recommendation, because like you plan, you do, you go check back, you again modify your plan, again you do, and then take it forward, right? So there is a constant improvement, and I think definitely it will have a positive impact on employee experience.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for that detailed answer, Janani. Now let's shift gears again, and now let's look at another important topic. I'm going to be talking about leadership resilience in times of crisis. So talk to us about what strategy should one employ to keep employees motivated when facing unprecedented challenges.
Unprecedented challenges could be different in different organizational constructs again. Like, you could have a sudden funding situation. You might have, as leadership, you might have gone ahead and decided that you will do increments, but then there is an unprecedented situation of a funding pullback. You've already communicated to employees, but you need to also ensure that the funding situation is managed. I mean, it could be, this is one extreme. To another unprecedented situation could be something like COVID that came and then just shook the world, right? So there are just varieties. But broadly, if you see, for unprecedented situations, number one, the HR team has to feel energized throughout the situation, Pulkit, because I would think me as a HR leader or my team are energizers to the organization. And if we are low on energy, we cannot give energy to others. So we have to be hyper bubbly when it comes to our energy levels. Now, that's an important aspect, right? I think the way I have dealt with it is I just look at my team first and ask, what is it that I will need during unprecedented situations or even great situations? I want my team's morale to be great. I want their motivation to be very good. They have to be really upbeat when it comes to their work and what they know about what's happening about their work, which is HR itself. And finally, they have to have a positive outlook about whatever will come, right? These are fundamentally my guiding principles for my HR team. I have to now break down and think that they will go through their own emotions as employees. So I typically have one-on-one conversations with my team when I know that such thing has happened and I need to manage the situation for next, let's say 3-4 months. I have one-on-ones with my team and try and understand what are their concerns, fears as employees, not as HR professionals, and then enable them, equip them, energize them. So once that's done, I think my team is set, which means I have my army to be able to manage whatever is upcoming. Then comes how I'm able to help the leadership that's going through this unprecedented change. Now, end of the day, people are people, right? Everybody is a human being. And I think as human resource leaders, it's important for us to have that view very clearly and speak to leaders as people and ask, hey, forget everything. Yes, the organization is going through all of this. What is in it for you? What are you thinking about? What are you going through? Because one side, you're energizing your team, that's good. Another side, you have to energize the leadership that's there as well. And see how you can get everyone to a reasonable degree of their ability to manage emotionally as well as mental strength has to be higher, right? So I think from these angles, HR professionals can certainly help a lot. Then comes the people saying, okay, this is what people want. Now, how is this large army of the leadership plus HR team going to handle this together collectively? And in many cases, I would say just be transparent with people as much as possible, because people appreciate candor, people appreciate transparency. While initially it might not be it's not a happy news, obviously, if there is an unprecedented situation, but I think they understand that, okay, here is a set of people who are really trying to manage and they're telling us what's happening, right? So let's give them our support and steer the ship forward. I think that's the attitude shift that happens if you're having that candor and transparency with people. Of course, to the limit that they are supposed to know. Beyond a point, I do believe that we shouldn't burden people with information that they can't tackle, because they'll not have that view. But you need to give what is important and relevant to them and seek help when needed. So I think broadly, these are what I would do during unprecedented times. Communicate continuously, seek help, seek support, look at people on the floor who are acting as those leaders that are not designated, right, to manage through this change. Ensure you're able to do many things that are low cost, high impact, or no cost, high impact. Use your external network to get people and speak during these times as well, because there are a lot of people who have some terrifically inspiring stories out there. And they can come and inspire, motivate people quite a bit. I think these are things I have done in the past and they've worked really well, Pulkit. Maybe I'll pause and see if this is sufficient or you're looking at anything more.
No, you have explained it very beautifully, Janani. And my next question that I have for you, I think this to a certain degree has been answered partially, but I would still want to check if there is anything that you would want to add to it. So in your experience, what role does company culture play in supporting leadership resilience?
That's a great question. Company culture is defined by the people and the leadership, okay? And building culture takes time. So first of all, there has to be a recognition of fact that culture is not like something that you can build over a few days. So if it is a totally negative and toxic culture, then it's just more energy for the leadership to ensure that the energy, the culture is brought to some level of sanity before you move forward. But it does have an impact, and it saps energy when we are trying to make changes or when you need to deal with unprecedented challenges. So I would think culture is very critical and invariable of organizational size or the life stage of the organization. Any company needs to focus on culture and continuously try and keep it positive and supportive to each other. Very important. And finally, yes, it has to be caring as well. If there is blaming culture or, throwing the ball off the fence and those kind of things, it is going to make it very tough, even for the people that want to make a change in an organization or want to deal with a difficult situation in an organization. I think some of this also need to be spoken through, but you should not wait for unprecedented times. I think if there is a culture issue that someone is spotting, it's critical to start dealing with it upfront and in fact start building that culture through multiple ways, so that during difficult times it becomes easier to deal with the entire situation together.
Great, thanks there, Janani, for that. Let's now talk about HR technology. Right, I've completely shifted gears now. And I think HR technology has tremendous role to play. There's so many disruptions happening right now across the globe within the HR function. So would love to know, give us some broad strokes on how you think HR technology could play a role in transforming HR as a function.
I think it is already transforming HR as a function quite a lot, Pulkit. Take your AI-based ATS or robots conducting your initial levels of interviews, or interview as a service, which never existed earlier, but that being enabled through technology. Your ability to anticipate who is joining you or not joining you through very intuitive algorithms and deep learning to provide insights about candidates, what they want, and then create a backup plan, or your ability to be able to provide personalized solutions to 5 generations of workforce that's working with you in an organization through technology. I think if I just have to put all of this together, it just gives a view of how technology is painting a very colorful picture to today's corporate world. I also think technology has penetrated into all the all the non-technology areas, right? Like last year when I was reading Josh Berson's trends report, I remember the term called a confluence of industries. I think that's another very huge aspect that we need to consider. Earlier, hospitals were only hospitals, but then now hospitals have their tech arm, which is like a pure play GCC that's running here. Or similarly, there is a financial company, but they have a huge technology arm. Or schools that are having their own technology verticals, or pharma companies, or manufacturing automobile companies having their own technology arm. Now, it's very critical at this stage to just think what kind of HR practices will be suitable for this group, because people are also going through so much change with technology's intervention into their lives and work. How can we enable them? But for us to enable them, how technology aware and savvy are we is a very critical question that one should ask ourselves, Pulkit. So I think this part is very crucial. I think every HR professional should be very tech aware, very tech savvy, take up courses. I think today, if there is a huge blessing, that is we have access to so much of free resources out there in the internet, and you can get a basic or broad idea about any technology easily and find its relevance to your work very easily without spending anything. And then, yes, once you find relevance, it's about using the technology in your own day-to-day work, or it's also about seeing where do you want to deepen yourself from a tech perspective, and how can you experiment with everything tech in your workplace. It's like running on a treadmill, I must say. If we're not becoming tech ready, because we'll not move forward, it's like if you're not progressing, you're regressing. There's nothing called status quo. So you'll just keep running on the treadmill, but you'll not move forward if you're doing things in the same way as that of the past. So use tech, run a marathon. That's what I would say.
Love that analogy between treadmill and how you described that entire situation. Thank you, Janani. One last question before we wrap up. Any piece of literature or book that has shaped your leadership journey?
Yes, there are a couple of books, I must say. One is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Very early on in my life, I read that book, and I read it again and again, or listen to it again and again, thanks to Audible and the likes, because it certainly brings my focus back to what's in my control and how I can manifest what I want. And as a HR leader, you will always deal with difficulties around. People come to you because there are problems. But in all of this, how do you ensure you're staying balanced, you're staying in calmness and sanity, so you're able to go and be an anchor to all of the people that you're catering to, right? So that book has a very big influence on me as a leader, Pulkit. Who Will Cry When You Die by Robin Sharma. I read that book as a child, and I actually have a huge influence of that book also. I mean, continuously thinking about what can I give more? How can I add value to any variety of person that I am in? Like, yes, today I'm a HR professional, but that's only an identity that's there right now. 5 years later, 10 years later, I don't know. But how can I spread my wings to impact different varieties of people? It could be through my other pursuits of yoga and music, or it could be through teaching, which I'm very passionate about, to downtrodden children, or to or people that just don't know what they don't know, and they are really trying to get their own identity out. right? So I think that book has a very big influence on me. And finally, The Compound Effect is another very good book I would recommend to people. It talks about daily practices that are done on a day-to-day basis and how it actually makes a huge difference to you as an individual. I often say this, I firmly believe in consistent practice and discipline if we want to build something in us, right? I say 1 to the power of 365 is 1, but 1.01 to the power of 365 is 37.8. Just that 0.01 done every day, 365 days, makes 37.8 times difference. So this book has a lot of influence on me, again, because I've fundamentally been practicing it from childhood, and it just reinforced that what I've been practicing is perhaps right for most people that are having compound effect by virtue of their practice.
Thanks, Janani, for sharing those books. I'm hoping I can read them sometime, but thank you for that. Shout out to you for joining us on the CHRO Mindset. I must say that your insights and experiences truly made our episode shine. Incredibly grateful for your time and wisdom, and the breadth and the depth of topics that you covered was absolutely fantastic. So thanks again for that.
Thank you so much, Pulkit. Thank you so much for having me in this session. And I really enjoyed having this conversation and responding to varieties of questions that you asked. So kudos to you.
Thank you. To all our listeners of the CHRO Mindset, big thanks for tuning in to our chat with Janani. We hope you enjoyed the episode and found it insightful. Stay tuned for more engaging HR talks. And if you loved today's episode, drop us a review on your whatever go-to platform you're listening this podcast on. Your thought mean the world to us. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to the CHRO Mindset podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a review. Join us next week for another insightful conversation with a top HR leader. And if you have any questions or feedback, reach out to us on social media or via email. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next week.